Hello everybody, I'm Minaji and this is FMV Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about the newest entry into the Impossible White Man genre, Nobody. If I were to give like a brief synopsis of Nobody, I mean, you've seen this movie 100 times. There's like an unassuming guy, the world starts pushing him, and then he lashes out. He reacts. But yeah, I don't really need to explain the plot too much. This movie's starring Bob Odenkirk. I think he's definitely grown to be quite a character actor. I don't know what it is about certain comedians. Certain comedians are, when they're given dramatic stuff to do, they are really good. Like Patton Oswalt's another one. But yeah, he's solid here. You know, I don't think the script gives him a whole lot to do emotionally, which I think ties into like another problem of the movie, but he's solid here. I mean, you can definitely tell he put in the work. I heard apparently he trained for 2 years to get in shape for this movie, and then apparently some of the initial ideas for the movie came from an experience he had of a home invasion and what he wished would have happened and whatnot. But yeah, this is like interesting to see Bob Odenkirk do this. You wouldn't really expect him to be doing an action movie, and he's pretty solid in it. I would say one of the things I like about this movie is that the bad guys, it's not a big thing, but the bad guys, even the people, the nameless dudes he's beating up and whatnot, they're given little human moments that kind of remind you that they're actually people, that they actually might have lives outside of this action set piece or this unfortunate situation they have found themselves with Bob Odenkirk's character. But yeah, there's like little funny moments where you get some kind of dark humor from them, and I appreciated that. So I did not know that the director of this movie is the same guy who did Hardcore Henry, which if you watch that movie, some of you might have gotten motion sick. But I thought as an action experience, it's definitely kind of a gimmick, and I don't know how much I would want to watch a movie in that first person perspective. But I thought Hardcore Henry was like a pretty interesting action movie, so it's good to see that this guy is continuing to do action. I don't think this movie is as interesting as something like Hardcore Henry, but he does show here that he has solid filmmaking chops. You know, it looks good. It looks good for a movie. I will say this movie luckily moves very fast because, like I said earlier in the synopsis, this is a plot line that you've probably heard 100 times. So the movie moves fairly fast, and I was glad it did that. Now, I will say, I think one of the problems that it has is that even though it knows what kind of story it's doing and it's trying to move through it fast to get us to, we want to get to the action and whatnot, I think it kind of shows how this genre and this kind of story that's being told here is, it may be to a point where if you're going to tell a movie that has a plot line like this, you've got to add something different to it. Like, it makes me think of the movie Drive, where we've seen tons of movies like Drive, the silent protagonist trying to protect the family, and he's involved in a world of crime. You can kind of see where that movie's going. What makes Drive interesting is it does something different where it's not done like an action movie. It has little bits of horror in it. It has like it has this kind of throwback 80s feel. It's a little bit more artsy, and I kind of wish this movie had done something with it like that here, because yeah, this material is just so well worn that I found myself, even though this movie's barely 90 minutes, I found myself sometimes kind of checking out because I was just kind of like, all right, there's nothing else here. Just get to the action. Like, there's not really much else to this movie. And that's unfortunately kind of sad. I will say the action is hard hitting. And I like the fact that the character, even though, Bob Odenkirk is a bit of a badass in this movie, in this middle-aged power fantasy, they do a good job of having it where he's getting hit about as hard as he's hitting other people. Like, every time he comes out of a fight, it's not one of those movies where he's that guy who never gets touched or whatever. He's getting hit quite a bit, and I think it shows a difference between. It helps this movie's action scenes, because I think there's certain movies, as like the Fast and Furious movies. As much as I like those movies, and they're like power fantasies and slowly turned into a vehicle for Vin Diesel's, like a peek into Vin Diesel's psyche and whatnot. There are moments in that movie where like Vin Diesel, I heard there's a thing in his contract where he could only get punched so many times. And that kind of stuff ruins action. In action, you need that back and forth, especially if the hand-to-hand combat. You need the hero, doling out punishment, and then you need the hero getting punished as well. So there's like this back and forth. And luckily this movie has that. And I want to bring up another point in, because this is something that I had wondered about. So this movie is produced by David Leitch. If you don't know about him, he's the guy who helped do the John Wick series. and did Atomic Blonde and whatnot. And I've noticed in the last 5 or 6 years, ever since John Wick debuted, that David Leitch has made quite a name making these American-style action movies. Because there's a lot of times, especially with someone like me as a critic, that I think Eastern movies tend to do like hand-to-hand action stuff better. But I would say with David Leitch coming up, he's kind of helped give American Western movies some solid choreography and action in their movies as well. And kind of done a string of these kind of things like John Wick, Atomic Blonde. You can see it a little bit in the Deadpool series. And this movie definitely benefits from that. This movie has some hard-hitting... This almost feels like an alternate version of John Wick, of like, okay, what if John Wick had a family and kind of just settled down in a middle-aged man age and wasn't super depressed all the time? What would that movie be? And, you know, and it kind of makes sense. Like a lot of David Leitch's stuff has like similar kind of plot structures, because, you know, it's an action movie, they want to get to action stuff. But yeah, I would say David Leitch is definitely a guy to watch if you want to see solid action movies. But yeah, but I want to talk about, kind of get into 2 more serious things that I want to talk about with this film, just thoughts that I had. And the first one I want to do is this movie's kind of making a critique against toxic masculinity a little bit, but it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, though, where you have it where at varied points in the movie, Bob Odenkirk's masculinity is being contrasted against these more stereotypical versions of masculinity, like big burly guys. They're always talking about, you know, they pack guns, brandish it openly. They talk about getting into fist fights, drinking, muscle cars and whatnot. And they are doing this thing where they're trying to contrast Bob Odenkirk's masculinity to theirs. But what they end up doing is, what I ended up realizing though, is just that it's not as if Bob Odenkirk is solving things peacefully or trying to de-escalate things. He just doesn't look like those stereotypical versions of masculinity, but he's still typifying the kind of like power fantasies that those guys imagined. Like Bob Odenkirk is still taking justice into his own hands, beating the crap. He imagined, you know, he's being like a total badass. He's super good with guns. He's super good at killing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like he's still typifying that kind of stuff. And then it makes me want to get into this last point about this film, which is, I just gotta be real. America, we love guns. Let's just be real. We love guns so much. It's possibly because part of the reason the way we like got this country was the fact that we had guns. We were fighting people who didn't have guns. We had guns, so we beat them. Let's be real. And you can't have your country founded on something like that and not have it be deeply embedded and interwoven into the identity of this country. Because let's be real, like a lot of American cinema, we like fetishize guns, right? Like, you know, the shots of Rambo with the 2 machine guns, Arnold Schwarzenegger with the shotguns and whatnot. You know, this is Eastern, but John Woo with the double pistol. You know what I mean? And this movie has a lot of gunplay. This movie definitely fetishizes guns. And I'm not trying to say this movie is trying to maliciously, because like think about the premise of this movie, right? It's like, it's a middle-aged white guy who reclaims his sense of masculinity and identity by getting guns, shooting people, and then beating people up. And the movie doesn't even get into certain things that would have maybe been interesting, but it would have ruined the middle-aged power fantasy, which is like, he basically, spoilers, gets his family embroiled in like a dangerous situation that when you really think about the film, if he just doesn't do a certain action, his family wouldn't be in like total danger. But the movie kind of plays it off with, you know, it kind of plays it off, but there's moments where it's like, oh, your character's kind of selfish. Yeah. But I wonder if people, especially like let's be real, I'm in Colorado. I live in Colorado. Less than a week ago, the shootings in Boulder happened, right? So I'm in the state that had Columbine happen. And a lot of those people who commit those kind of heinous crimes look a certain way. They look like middle-aged white dudes or just young white dudes. And they definitely have a love of guns. And I do wonder if an unintended effect of a movie like this, or even like a John Wick, I'm not trying to diss John Wick, but if those people, there's some people who watch those movies and go, oh, that was like a fun like power fantasy thing, but that's it. But there's certain people where they watch it and they like identify with it, right? I just recently watched the movie Taxi Driver, and I'm so glad I watched that movie now at 30 and not, because I know a young teenage me or early 20 something me, if I had seen that movie, I would have identified with it and possibly been part of that culture that was like, oh yeah, Travis Bickle, man, he's so cool. But like watching it at 30, I just was going, man, this guy is dangerous. This guy's a ticking time bomb. And I wonder how much certain people watch movies like that and take the wrong message from it and like identify maybe too much with the protagonist to the point that they try to bring that power fantasy into their real life, not taking in the full consequences of reality. Because within our social context, especially American social context, we have had a lot of incidents happen, very bad incidences happen because of the prevalence of guns in our country. So this is not necessarily a ding on the movie, but I couldn't help but have that part being rubbed into my face a little bit of like, man, this movie's really fetishizing gunplay. Because you really have it where the main character is saying things where he's like, man, I miss killing, or like, you know what I mean? He's like smiling as he like blows a dude away with a shotgun. And I know, like, I'm not saying that the movie's like just kind of dumb fun. It's cool, but I just couldn't help but go like, man, I know a young me when I used to watch this, I definitely thought guns were cool because, you know, movies make them look so cool, but it doesn't take in the reality of it. But I just something to leave you with. So I would say if you're trying to look for a solid American style action movie with just dumb action thrills, I would say nobody's pretty solid. Just don't try to take that fantasy into your real life. But so ultimately I would say I'm gonna give Nobody a 7 out of 10. So if you dug this review, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.